men. He's Josh Booty. I'm Rachel Baribeau. We want to talk football with you. Josh, before we dive into these games, I got to tell you, I came back from your native land, your native state, Louisiana, and I think I'm 10 pounds heavier, but yet I don't regret one bite. I think I had catfish, I had gator, I had jambalaya. I mean, that just that's the beginning of what I had, but I realized as I came back that I'm about 10 pounds heavier, and I don't regret one bit.
No, it was an awesome time, and you actually, and we need to tell the viewers this, but you actually came over and cooked an unbelievable breakfast for the house that I was staying in, and it was just an amazing breakfast. And you did it 2 days in a row, so now I'm wanting your breakfast every day. But I did put on some weight, and we even got a workout together. At Traction there, which is Ryan Terrio, former Major League Baseball World Series champion, his workout center there in Baton Rouge. But just an overall awesome weekend. I just got back to California. I'm back in Newport Beach now after a long weekend, but it was just a super lot of fun.
I haven't tailgated in like 10 years, and I told you on the way to the tailgate, I haven't tailgated in 10 years, and you said, "Oh, you just wait." And first of all, you gave us a backstage tour of the football facility, and we got to see where you were on the wall and all the trophies and all the neat things going on there in the football facility. And then you took me to some of the most amazing tailgates.
Well, my picture on the wall is about this big. I wish it was a lot bigger, but the experience in Baton Rouge is so much different than anywhere else because of the culture and the food. I mean, you can go to all the different places in the country, and there's 50 probably great venues, great stadiums. Every one of the SEC stadiums have their own awesome things about them. But being at home at LSU and being a part of that culture, you can see why people get into the tailgate. We saw a big fried alligator on a big table that was about a 6-footer, and those things don't happen at some of the other places. So we do things a little different. But what a weekend, what a good game. Florida actually really played well, and the second string quarterback or third string quarterback, Treon Harris, who was called to duty because of the stuff with Will Greer last week, really played a phenomenal football game. I was really shocked to see how well he moved around and how well he played. He kept them in that entire ball game, and they really had a chance to tie it at the end. That was a huge boost for Florida that he played that well.
I said this to a couple of people. I did ESPN Baton Rouge on Monday as I was headed back with Jordy Culotta. And I said, if you're talking about SEC football, if you're talking about football wherever, that game lived up to its billing. And especially with Will Greer in the news last week that he's suspended for performance-enhancing drugs, and the short week that Treon Harris had to prepare. Josh, and we've discussed this on this podcast before, and I think it's worth repeating. Having not played other than just training camp, I look at a lot of different things, and I look at trends and what coaches do and play calling and all sorts of things. And when Jim McElwain, right there at the beginning with the botch punt, right? They recover it. They're right there in the red zone. On fourth down, you think they're going to kick the ball. And he said, "Oh, heck no. We're going to go for it." And I felt like that set the tone for the Florida Gators. And I felt like he was saying something to his team that we're going to be physical, we're going to go for it, and we're going to be aggressive for this entire game. And they were.
Yeah, the aggressive style that he brings to the table, and I think the confidence he shows on the offensive side of the ball, especially because Florida hadn't had that in the past, and they were really a defensive team with Muschamp there the last several seasons. To have McElwain come in there and step up and have them playing at a high level on offense has got to be fun for that entire team and the chemistry of the team. If you're a quarterback, your receivers, your running backs, your tight ends, your offensive line, you want to see something happen on offense, and they hadn't had that in several years. So to think that he's got the confidence that they can move the football in the way that they are moving the football, LSU's got a good defense. They scored 28 points against LSU at Tiger Stadium. A lot of times you come out with wins if you score that many points down there in Death Valley. But, you can see that Florida is going to be we were talking about it, a fire-breathing dragon in a couple of years. I mean, they're going to be scary good because the athletes, we all know they got the great athletes in Florida. They're going to be really good. Michael Wayne is coaching them up. They're a team that could still possibly win this whole SEC if they went out. They control their own destiny.
I was talking to one of your friends after the game, after doing post-game and sending interviews back to SiriusXM, and we were kind of arguing in a nice way about Leonard Fournette, and I said I met him in an airport, and he didn't seem like he was he's not huge. He's ripped, don't get me wrong. But seeing him on the sideline, and I know you spent half the game on the sideline as well, he runs angry. He runs, I mean, there were stiff arms being thrown. There were like, get off me's being said, and you could feel that. And I asked you too, and have you seen him progressively get better? I want to ask you that, but also Les Miles talked about the fact that he felt like there was some chippy play after the whistle, and the whistles weren't even being blown as soon as they should have, and there was some physical attacks, if you will, on Leonard Fournette by Florida.
Yeah, I think, anytime there's a player that is that hyped on the national scene, it's like a Tim Tebow or a Johnny Manziel or a Matt Leinart. I'm trying to think of some that have been in the past decade or so, a Cam Newton. Everybody's gunning for that player or for that team and for that player. I mean, so anytime they can get a shot on Fournette, it's they're going to go home and tell their parents about it. I smoked him once. Didn't you see it? Didn't you see it? I mean, that's so it as a player, you want to do something well against the best player in the country. Everybody knows he's probably the finest college player there is in all of college football this year. So that's just players wanting to play up to their competition. So they're going to take and drive him a little bit harder. But he does run with a heavy head. I mean, it's amazing that he's got the nimble feet and he can make moves and shake, and then he can get going so fast, and he can also run right over you like a Mack truck, and his decisions are on the fly, and the way that he runs is remarkable to me. And we've seen some great running backs in the past 20 or 30 years in the SEC, but he ranks up there at the very top. This guy's physical, just a physical specimen.
Josh, he was running with the luxury of his fullback that he's used to in that game, and also reports out of Baton Rouge by the Advocate there that the senior tight end as well re-injured an Achilles that held him out for a couple of games earlier in the season, and so there may be seeking a medical red shirt for him depending on what the NCAA says. I'm just curious how that plays out for them in this next game. Next couple of games.
That's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt LSU. Not. I don't think necessarily this week because they've got a non-conference game, and I think they'll take care of business home. But I think it will. I mean, they have a week off, and then they're going to play Alabama, and that's a game that we'll be at in Tuscaloosa, and that's one that everybody's already looking at, and so those are little things that are going to weigh big in big games. When you're not at full strength, when you've got 10 out of your 11 starters or 9 out of your 11 starters on offense, and if you get hurt, you keep going to the second, you have to go to that next guy, and whether he's a freshman or a young guy that's got to step up in that position, sometimes you get a player that's ready to play, and sometimes you don't, and you won't know till you get in situations. So they don't have a lot of time to get these new guys a lot of reps before they play Alabama on the road, which will be the biggest game in the West in the SEC this year. So they've got to get somebody ready. It's going to be interesting. But Alabama, we could talk about them all day. They go on the road and beat up on Texas A&M. And I know you watched that game close. I mean, the way that their style of defense and how hungry they're playing now after that loss to Ole Miss early in the season, it's like they got pissed off and they're playing at a different level. And I know you're seeing exactly what I'm seeing. Everybody else is seeing it. That Bama defense is strong.
I know for a fact Nick Saban doesn't forget things. You can be told that he does, that he doesn't notice things, doesn't forget things, but he forgets things. He doesn't. And my hunch is that there's unfinished business on his part, on Kirby Smart's part. Certainly they were beat up defensively in the Sugar Bowl last year. But my sense is there's unfinished business that's carried over from last year, and that those coaches are coaching, and those upperclassmen, those guys that went through it, are playing like they're so they got a fire underneath their rear end. That's what they're playing like right now. I mean, the defense scored 3 times right in that Texas A&M game, first time it's ever happened in Alabama history, and the secondary was supposed to be the question mark coming into this season, and they're playing lights out. So from the front 7 to the back end of that defense, and then you've got, this is hilarious, you've got Jacob Coker being called Vanilla Vic, Baby Roethlisberger. All these names are giving him in the locker room because of his physical play on the field.
Yeah, he's actually, he runs decent enough. He runs well enough to hurt you with his legs. And, I think he had, this is his first year to start and really play and be the leader. And to be that guy for Alabama, that's a lot of pressure on somebody. I mean, the Alabama quarterback is the most watched position in all of college football. So, he has it's a lot on his shoulders early on. And then they take the loss at home against Ole Miss, and that was a big loss. And for him to bounce back in the way that the team has come back to play strong, I mean, Alabama looks like the best team in the country to me now with what's going on with what Urban Meyer's doing and making a QB switch right in the middle of this week and going with JT Barrett over Cardell Jones. That's going to be interesting to see. The life kind of might come right back into Ohio State and what they are able to do on offense, because they've been playing some games that have been close, some games that they should have probably blown some teams out, but they haven't been as productive on offense. So to see him come back in and take over the reins, we might see an Ohio State team that looks super dangerous in the weeks to come.
Back to the Alabama game and the Alabama team for just a moment before we move on. Lane Kiffin like a lot of people don't know him. And I went crazy. I sent you a tweet. We were in the press box, but I sent you a tweet and I said, did you see what Lane Kiffin just did to Nick Saban? He gave him the stiff arm. And it was Nick Saban was going to call a timeout, and Lane Kiffin kind of, he overrode him. And I thought, that might not be good for his livelihood. But you shared a different perspective because you do know Lane Kiffin and you do know Nick Saban.
Well, I think Nick, first of all, he did give him a little nudge, but I think that shows that Lane Kiffin knows what he's doing. It's like, I'm in control of my offense. I'm in control of the situation that is at hand. And I think when an offensive coordinator or coach or position coach goes, wait a minute, I got this one, Nick. Let me handle this. You named me the offensive coordinator for a reason. I know how to call plays. I know how to deal with my players. I know how to get the right guys on the field for certain situations. And I think that's what Saban was wanting to probably question what was going on, because Saban has to know everything. He's such a control freak. And to have, Lane go, wait a minute, buddy, we got this one, shows a lot of Lane Kiffin's confidence as a coach. And that's just maybe him growing up a little bit. And I think that's, what we saw with that incident on Saturday was Kiffin just grew up, and now he knows that, he knows that he has the right thing going on the field, and it looks like Alabama's starting to really gel.
I know we both talked about the Ole Miss Memphis game, and Josh, if you just look at it on the surface, you go, oh my gosh, Ole Miss couldn't handle the heat. They had this big win with a 5 turnover against Alabama in Tuscaloosa, but there are extenuating circumstances there. One, Justin Fuente is one of the hottest young coaches in the country. South Carolina's looking at 3 guys: Tom Herman, Houston; Justin Fuente, Memphis; and Kirby Smart of Alabama, the defensive coordinator. Their quarterback's balling out. I think he's had like 300-plus yards in 5 consecutive games. And then Ole Miss has injuries, and Robert Nkemdiche in the second quarter goes out with a concussion. They got an injury to a linebacker, injury to a defensive back, an injury to a defensive tackle, and the lack of a run game. So there were more than just what we saw in the score, and I want people to know that.
Yeah, Memphis, they matched up well against Ole Miss, obviously. I mean, they came out there with a huge win for their program. But a lot of these players, played against each other in high school. They're in the same vicinity or region, of Tennessee, South Tennessee and northern Mississippi. So a lot of those players come from the same area. So that's, these guys at Memphis are wanting to show, Ole Miss something because they weren't recruited, like the kids were at Ole Miss, and they weren't signed by Ole Miss when maybe they were wanting to go there or had dreams or aspirations growing up. So they come in there with a chip on their shoulder, and so I blame a lot of it on Hugh Freeze. Now I keep seeing Feinbaum over you when I'm talking back there. I don't know. He's giving me a weird look too, but no, I blame Hugh Freeze really for that loss. It's a game that they can't lose. Ole Miss is a really good football team, and for them to lose two in the last 3 weeks after winning on the road at Alabama kind of shows me the character of their team. And I don't know whether they're not deep enough or, maybe they're not running the ball effectively enough, but they're doing something that's not getting them where they need to be. And, they have a big game this week against Texas A&M. That's another showcase game for Ole Miss. They cannot continue to play bad week in, week out.
Yeah, and to add to the whole Fuente deal, I mean, this is a guy, they have the third longest winning streak behind Ohio State and TCU. So he didn't go up against any slouch.
Yeah, they're definitely a great program, and they've caught everybody's eye now. So he's not flying under any radars. I mean, that win was huge, and this is how coaches make that big leap or make that big step and get that head coaching job that they've always dreamed about, or that marquee job. And that's how most of these guys that got there, Hugh Freeze and everybody else in the SEC, they had to go through and coach at these mid-level schools and do well, and someone caught everybody's eye. But that's exactly what's happening there at Memphis.
And listen, I'm a softie. We figured it out by now. You know me. You have to work it with me day in and day out. Middle name's Joy. I love the little guy. Maybe it's because I'm an Auburn graduate, but I love the little guy, Josh. And to see the little guys at Memphis, the guys that maybe were the 1-star, 2-star, being coached up to play like they were 5 stars, there's something in that. There's some life lessons there that makes me tear up.
Another team on the Nationals that's doing a lot of good things nationally is Houston. And what they're doing at the University of Houston, it's kind of like exactly what Memphis is doing. These guys are playing great football. So it's fun to watch some of these mid-level schools and these coaches and players really rise to the occasion and get into a system and really get some good things going. But it's super fun to watch. But another one is your good friend Sumlin. I mean, he was at Houston and made the jump to A&M, but that's how these guys do it. And to knock off Ole Miss is, on one side of the fence. On the SEC side of the fence, we hate to see SEC teams lose to teams that aren't, inside the conference. But it's going to happen because Memphis is so well coached.
Well, and you know what? This whole deal has an effect on Alabama in the long run when in just a couple of weeks here, the College Football Playoff Committee starts to look at their resume. Hopefully, as Memphis is winning, it won't make Ole Miss that loss to Ole Miss. It won't make it so bad. But Alabama did lose to Ole Miss at home. Now they'll say the 5 turnovers and all of those things, but Alabama's going to need that resume, that strength of schedule to be as strong as they can with a strong LSU and with a lot of strong contenders across the country.
Yeah, it definitely hurts them a little bit. Anytime you lose to a team that begins to lose down the road, it shows that they're not quite as good as they thought they were, and so Ole Miss is at the point now where they've got to really get back on track, and that will help Alabama if they do. But this LSU matchup November 7th at Bama is going to be awesome because both teams go into that week with a bye, and it's just going to be fun to see Saban matchup versus Les Miles, Saban's old school versus Les Miles, and the way that in Fournette and the way they're playing great football right now. It's just one of those big time matchups.
I can't wait, Josh. Any final thoughts on the weekend that was before we move on later on in the week to the football season's almost over. What's going on?
We're halfway through the deal on our site on Gridiron Now. Is like our mid-season SEC. All SEC team. Like, hey, you got to be kidding me! This thing's almost half over, and it's so much fun. I hate to see it. The season go by this fast, but these games have all been awesome. It's going to be fun this week. Tennessee goes to Bama. a chance for them to really show themselves. I think Kentucky's got a good football team too. We're not talking much about them, but they have a real chance to make some headway in the SEC this week as well. So it's going to be fun to watch what's happened. I think Florida's a really good football team. You go on the road to Death Valley and almost win, and in a hostile environment with a backup quarterback. I really think they got a chance to come out of the East this year and get back to the SEC championship. So, it's been a lot of fun. Last week was a lot of fun.
And congratulations to Coach Elliott at USC, the interim coach there. If you didn't catch the video, we've got it on Gridiron now. It's out there on the internet as well. He's jumping around with his players. He's chest bumping pregame. I mean, that guy is the most fired up guy in the country. And we know great interims have made great coaches and certainly made a mark at the school that they're at when they've been hired. So he could certainly do that. Although he does face stiff competition, those three guys that I mentioned that USC will be looking at. But we'll be talking all about that, Josh, later on, the coaching carousel, because it's heating up. It's going to be a crazy year in terms of guys moving, taking assistants with them. But I can't wait to do this with you again later on in the week.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun, and this week's we got a lot of great matchups, and so it's going to be a lot of fun this week. I can't wait.